Back to Politics HQ, where the temperature of the Nigerian economic anxiety is rising faster than even inflation. The Naira's plunge is sending shockwaves across Nigeria. Businesses are grappling and the citizens are feeling the pinch. On Friday, the Naira dollar rate, exchange rate, ended at 891 Naira plus to the dollar on Friday. And then after that, we came back on Monday in trading. It ended at more than 1,300 Naira to the US dollar. And that, of course, sent shockwaves around the Nigerian economy. That's the lowest that the Naira has ever been, in history. Well, we hear that the Central Bank of Nigeria is inviting the governor, the Nigerian Senate, is inviting the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria to come and explain to it what he knows about the falling and the plunging of the Nigerian currency. Our guest tonight, joining us to discuss this, is none other than an economist. He is Razak Fatai. Razak, thank you so very kindly for your time tonight. Let's start this way, Razak. What factors are contributing to the Naira's relentless descent, against major currencies?
All right, thank you. So when you look at the FX, sources of FX, that where Nigeria gets its dollar as a result of international trade and the likes, we'd see that it basically comes from oil. As we've seen the trend that oil has been a dominant source of dollar from trade perspective, accounting for over 80% of FX inflow in form of trade. And if that continues, as it has continued over the years, it has meant that whatever happens to oil happens to the Nigerian economy, right? If oil price falls, you see the shockwave sent in the form of currency depreciation, or if crude oil production shocks happen, we also feel the impact significantly. And that is exactly what we've been grappling with. When you look at some of the biggest shocks that Nigeria has confronted with, starting with the 2014 oil price crisis, which saw the currency depreciate significantly. But more importantly, since COVID-19 hit, we've seen continuous fall in the value of the currency. But what is most what is actually the biggest driver is the fact that we continue to rely on oil production, right? And what we've seen is even after the effect of COVID-19 has kind of reduced, we see that oil production continued to decline due to oil theft, which is increasingly becoming a problem. And not until this is fixed to boost oil production up to the potential level, which usually average around 2 million barrels per day. And what we currently produce now is somewhere around 1.2. We've struggled to actually raise production beyond that level due to the oil theft. And not until we're able to address that problem, Naira will continue to be vulnerable because fundamentally we are an oil economy, right? And the only way to fix that problem is to transition out of oil. But in the immediate terms, ultimately what we need to do is to fix oil, right? President Tinubu needs to come up with a plan, maybe a 30-day plan or 60-day plan to tell us what will be done to actually increase oil production. Not until that is done, we'll continue to feel busy. And I'm sure you can also see from the recent news about the Dangote refinery having to import crude oil from the US, and that's a result of the fundamental problem that we are not producing enough crude oil.
Razak, interesting points you've made there. We're talking about the Naira and its importance and how it firms up, how it performs, against major international currencies. But beyond the Naira, are there other broader economic indicators that we can look to? And what are these broader economic indicators revealing about Nigeria's economy, Nigeria's economic challenges, and the state of affairs of the nation's economy as we speak today?
All right, thank you. So if as an analyst, I want to advise, I will just give an hypothetical situation. As an analyst, if I want to advise maybe an investor or someone who has keen interest in Nigeria, the key indicators I'll be watching out for, like you said, the stability of the exchange rate is one, but I also want to know if the country is safe. I would like to know if the country is safe. I would like to know if I decide to enter Nigeria to bring in my goods, how easy it is to move my goods across borders, right? I want to know if I decide to set up a plant. I want to know if energy cost is considerably low to help me produce at a unit economics that makes me competitive. But if you look at all of these indicators that I've mentioned, right, there are quite a number. But if you look at all these indicators that I've mentioned from the exchange rate stability to security and all that, that Nigeria is falling short of all these major indicators, which is seriously concerning. We've seen, I'm sure a lot of people have been seeing in the news is either there is one kidnapping in Kubwa, in Abuja, or the case of two ladies that were recently kidnapped somewhere in the south, I think, or I mean, we hear many cases of that. And in fact, there is also data that suggested that there is the rate of banditry and these incidents is beginning to pick up. So if we don't address some of these fundamental problems, if we don't safeguard lives, if we don't make Nigeria a place where if I want to bring in my goods or I want to export my goods, I don't have to pay bribes to customs, or I don't have to wait several days to be able to move my goods across border. If we don't put Nigeria in a situation where energy prices comes down because we'll be able to upscale our facility and people don't have to rely on diesel to produce. If we have a Nigeria whereby people can easily resolve problems or if there are issues with contracting, they can get fair judgment in the courts. So if you don't have all of this, if Nigeria does not improve all these major metrics, we'll continue to see that the economy will be weak. And if a country cannot attract investment, any country that cannot attract investment will bound to be poor, right? Because ultimately, the foundation for wealth creation is when both domestic and foreign investors can come in, bring in their funds, put into a business, the business grows, create 2, 3, 10, 100, thousands of jobs. And those people who have jobs have more money to spend to stimulate demand, and the effect goes on.
All right.
But if you look at it the other way around, if an economy is not doing well, what you see is business continue to shut down, and the spillover effect is the availability of quality jobs will continue to dwindle.
All right.
And what that means it is more people in poverty.
Razak, Olayemi Cardoso, the central bank governor, will be standing for the first time since the Senate told him asked him to take a bow. Before them, what will he be telling them? I'm sure he would like to tell them, give them at least a bit of his scorecard. So, what other measures has the central bank, already taken to stabilize the Naira and address Nigeria's very, very hot and troubling economic challenges? And how effective have they been?
All right. Okay, thank you. So since President Tinubu came in and with the new CBN Governor, we've seen several moves. The first was liberalizing the market and floating, which was expected would help converge the rates, the divergence, help address the divergence between the parallel and the official. But we'll see that has not happened. And that's because the fundamental problem remains, right? There is no scarcity of FX because we are not producing enough goods, right? And we've seen other moves, which has up until now compounded the problem, which is the issue with backlogs, like maybe an airline owned by a company abroad, did transaction, they need to mop up their dollar, or maybe I pay for Netflix and Netflix needs to convert that to that. So there's been a backlog of all sorts of transactions, which Nigeria had not been able to clear. And I think the CBN has done well, trying to clear this backlog. But notwithstanding, we see that the fundamentals are still very weak. Like I said, if we don't raise oil production to the potential level, even if it's just to raise to the OPEC requirement level that would get us to maximize the benefit of trade, even if that's just what we are able to do in the short term, that would make a huge difference, right? Just think of increasing oil production from about 1.3 million barrels to maybe 1.6 or 1.7. That 300,000
All right.
multiplied by maybe $5, and just see that
Yep.
translates to billions of dollars, right?
Okay,
And
Razak,
all of the
please
things
hold the thought. I'm so
that
sorry to interject you, but we have to go for a
yeah.
commercial break. When we come back, we'll ask you some more questions before we are done. Please stay with us. All right, welcome back. Still talking about the Nigerian Senate inviting the president, or the governor rather, of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Olayemi Cardoso, to appear before it to explain, tell them what he knows about the fall of the decline of the Nigerian currency, the Naira. With me tonight is Fatai Razak, or Razak Fatai. He's an economist. And Razak, before we went on a break here, you were talking about what the Central Bank of Nigeria, as the controller of the Nigerian monetary side of the economy, what they've done and to make things better. But I just want to ask you, regarding the Naira, this whole issue of trying to settle forex backlogs and forex remittances, and borrowing from international organizations and foreign donors and countries to be able to settle these backlogs, is it a wise strategy? So you want to pay for a Netflix, like you said, and then you're paying Naira, and someone has to convert that Naira to dollar to give it to Netflix. Now, should the government be going to borrow money to give to Nigerian businesses and individuals so they can give it back to foreign countries? Is that wise?
All right, thank you. So I would like to approach this from a concept of stability and also for how long the crisis exists. So from the point of stability, there is nothing wrong in the central bank trying to stabilize the rate, right? Because businesses want predictability, right? I want a situation whereby if I go to the market to exchange dollar at 500, I probably want it to stay the same, right? So that it helps me to plan my businesses. But in a situation where dollar can move to maybe about 600 Naira per dollar or 1,000, and then next day it drops to, it doesn't help with business planning, right? Because that's a huge risk. So ideally, there's nothing wrong in CBN trying to intervene, right, to stabilize price. But when it is being done for a very long time, it means that it comes at a cost, right? Because all the buffers that the CBN needs to make to intervene means it needs to spend some of its own resources to do that, right? So that's one. Then the other thing is, now, if the CBN has to now borrow, which in this context, to borrow to actually support, to help inject USD to stabilize. Ideally, what would have made sense is to use concessionary sources where they can get dollar at maybe 1% or 2% interest rates. Ideally, that would have been the best thing to do, right? But what we've seen is, from some of the past transactions, we see them borrowing at almost 10%, especially
this last one is 11 point something percent. This $3.3 billion.
Yeah, so borrowing at such rate is quite ridiculous and unsustainable for any economy.
All right, Razak Fatai, we have to keep it ended at that. We'll keep our eyes on what will transpire when the CBN Governor appears before the Nigerian Senate. But I want to thank you so very kindly for your time tonight.
All right, thank you for having me.
And that's the size of a package this week on Politics HQ. Join us again next week when we come your way with the latest conversations regarding politics in Nigeria. My name is Kofi Bartels. Have a great weekend.